So we are here. How's it going? It's
Going.
Friday. What day is it? It's Friday the 20th of March. Last week was Friday the 13th for the second month in a row. And somebody somebody actually checked. And now I don't remember, but it's like it's like the two Friday the 13th back to back occurs something like once every 9 or 10 years, I think. So that's pretty cool.
But also
But
today's the spring equinox.
oh, right. That's probably why it's raining so hard outside. I had to go and declog my driveway drain to make, because it was flooding. With all
it is the spring
water.
equinox. The sun has officially crossed from the south to the north
Welcome,
on the little
sun.
ecliptic plane there, and it is Aries season in the beginning of, well, technically it's spring, but LA is having a heat wave again, so it's gonna be in the 90s today. Love that.
That's insanity. It really, and that's really just that really is just kind of nuts. So so I think for starters, I just wanted to, hey Vish, you knew this, right? That Apologia published a video on Monday featuring myself and Dr. Joshua Bowen from Digital Hammurabi.
Yes.
And he revealed new talents, I think, to some people.
The interlude, I'm going to do a little beatboxing.
Sorry, did you finish?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
I was just doing some interim beatboxing there, so.
no.
Yes.
Dr. Joshua Bowen, interim beatboxer. It's pretty great. So now he was looking at the comments on the video today, just literally 20-30 minutes ago, and he had to send me this. And I was so tickled by this. I just felt it necessary to share it with everyone, because I laughed when I saw it. I thought this was something. This really was. So this person had this to say. Can I read this? I don't do it. I don't do the dripping condescension quite as well as you do, but I'm gonna try. I'm not a Christian, so I have no dog in this fight. I'm not sure what fight that is, but Kip Davis, 1P, is perhaps the most sanctimonious, the most sanctimonious person I've ever heard. Humility is a positive virtue, whether you're a person who follows organized religion or not. I find many of the atheist community have intense hubris, and even more so, disdain for those they disagree with. Matt Dillahunty has a similar problem. I think this is why Alex O'Connor is so popular. He isn't talking down to religion. He's ferocious in debate, which is positive. But Kip is just drenched in disdain, hatred, and ego. Imagine spending your entire life thinking you're an expert on something you clearly hate with every fiber of your being. Kip, perhaps it's time to go do something productive for yourself and not spend more time engaging in religious studies. Not that you aren't smart or don't understand the text, but unlike Bart Ehrman, who clearly reveres the Bible, the viewers can see that you hate it. I'm sorry for you. I hope you find some joy.
Okay.
Very nice. Very, very well placed, Vish. Very well placed. Wow, you found.
While you were reading that, that
That
finger
chain
wagging
sound effect?
screed. I had to go find some of the things for the soundboard here. So,
Yeah, you did. Wow. Oh, can you
because
add
much
things
like
to the soundboard?
Guts at Garrett Gibbon, Erica, I too am a meme lord. So it's gonna be nice to have access to some of these little soundboard reactions. It'll, keep me from interrupting videos, maybe, possibly. I don't know.
Wow, we can it's something to aspire to. So see, this is what I thought. You're not wrong, Brandon. I had t-shirts made and everything for this. How
You
did
did. You
the
did.
message get so? Oh, there you did like a, not that one. You did a typing correction. How did the message get so garbled in my delivery? I
Hmm.
this is a mystery to me. So, but anyways, that was fun. I thought I had to share that today, and now I can't hide. There we go. Okay, cool. So, that's that was that. Today, now first I'll mention this as well. I'll get this out of the way, in part because I am very excited. I hope we stream every Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I hope that everybody will be back next week. Yeah, now that you're here, don't go anywhere. Stick around. But I do hope that everyone will be back next week, because I'm pretty excited. It's been a while since we've had a pair of guests on at the same time, and next week we're going to have both friend of the channel, Apologia, and friend of the channel, CJ Cornthwaite, on, and we're going to be responding to a recent stream that Inspiring Philosophy published this week, critiquing one of Paul's also recent resurrection videos. And I just, speaking of sanctimonious hubris, I was watching I was watching this stream from Inspiring Philosophy, and I thought, this I feel like this just requires, I just can't stay quiet about this. Yes, it is a Canadian takeover of the internet happening next Friday. I hope everyone's
That means I
here for
have
that.
exactly 1 week to go find
Should-
the clip of Trombone Hero where they're playing the Canadian national anthem.
Excellent. I think
It's
that's
beautiful. It's a beautiful rendition.
I feel like you've shown me that one. So that's happening next week. Something else that's happening next week that I'm really excited about is Dr. Josh and I we recorded a conversation that we had with Dr. Christy Cobb, who is an associate professor, sorry, of biblical studies at the University of Denver, specializing in, she's a New Testament professor, and she specializes in marginalized movements, and women and gender studies in the Bible. She's written books about slavery and about women in the Bible. And it just, I mean, I feel like maybe that's it. Next week is just is just Inspiring Philosophy week, because he published a video about a month ago entitled "The New Testament Ended Slavery," which it absolutely fucking didn't. And it felt necessary to pull in Dr. Cobb to help Josh and I talk about this topic, because I mean, you know me, I'm not really a New Testament scholar, although I feel like I spend an awful lot of time talking about the New Testament. And Josh doesn't know the New Testament from a hole in the ground. So it felt like we could use some experienced help with that. I am about 80% finished.
Vicors and I on the same page, like, oh, the New Testament
Yeah.
and slavery. Yeah, nobody noticed
No
for
one
over
noticed.
1700 years. Isn't that weird?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's true.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
even Cheryl, good to see Cheryl, was like, "It did
good to
what?"
see, sure. It sure didn't. So, as someone who wrote a whole book on the Book of Philemon, the New Testament absolutely has nothing to say against slavery. And what it does say about slavery is disgusting and repulsive. Thank you, Chrissy,
Thank you,
for weighing
Chrissy, who
in.
has
And thank you
published
for showing.
in the field, unlike
Yeah,
in
she very
Sweet.
recently published a new study on Philemon. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard good things. And I would expect nothing less because everything that Chrissy does is pretty good. So
No, it doesn't depend on what we mean by
no, it
slavery.
really
It's
doesn't
slavery.
depend on what you mean by slavery.
There's no
It
better, like,
what
version or less crappy version. It's
we mean
slavery.
by slavery is the enslavement of human beings. I
Yep.
now I know that's not that was a circular definition, wasn't it? It is the
Kinda.
ownership. It's the ownership of rights to labor as a minimum, and potentially expensive from that, and it's all bad. It's all bad.
Yep.
So, the video is about 80%. I'm about
Oh, yeah.
80%
Okay, they were
done.
doing the Jordan Peterson. You're
Oh,
gonna have to
thank
put,
you.
like, a
Thank you very much.
frog emoji or, like, some kind of indicator to let us know that it's Jordan Peterson so that we can pinch our nose and do the Kermit voice.
That's good. That's good. I was having Trent Horn flashbacks from
Aye.
that one. So uh the video on that we recorded is an hour and 50 minutes long, and I'm about 80% finished the editing. So it's going to be, hold on, before you read that, let me finish this. It's going to be out next week for for patrons and members at the very least. So if you aren't a patron or a member and you like seeing, commercial free, unredacted, early shit, then sign up. And next week there will be a new video for you to watch, and I'm very excited about it. So that's coming out next week as well. And I just feel like the timing is kind of perfect with Paul and CJ coming on the channel as well. So
It was just
yeah.
a Pokemon joke.
Oh, was it?
wasn't
See,
gonna be wrong.
that also means nothing to me. And you know this.
Even
So
though you're a Mudkip.
right, that's true. I did know that. But like
Mhm.
mudkips are real. So, it
The movers misinterpretations. Hey, how's it going? Says the movers are almost finished moving stuff in. I'm so
Oh,
tired. Yes, I
it's the
recently went
worst.
through this. I sympathize. Oh my
So
gosh.
much.
Take
It's the
so much time to rest before you do all the other things because it's exhausting.
It's terrible.
Solidarity.
Just terrible. So, but
Yeah.
hang in there, Marin. Yeah. All right. So that out of the way, let's talk about today. So we're all familiar with Wes Huff, Christian apologist, vice president at Apologetics Canada, fellow Canadian, and still a PhD student at was it Tyndale, I think, Tyndale College at the University of Toronto, and anxiously, eagerly awaiting his completion of his PhD thesis, so that I can see what kind of scholarship Wes does, because I have nothing so far
Yeah.
to look at. But he's kind of all over the place, and he recently announced, I think it was a month or two ago, he announced that he was partnering up with the Museum of the Bible. Did you pull up that one, or did you that
I
video?
can
Do you
do
want
that
to look at
right
it?
now.
Yeah. So Wes Huff has partnered with the Museum of the Bible to promote their exhibit of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and these are not the fake ones that they still own but no longer display. These are like authentic Dead Sea Scrolls on loan from the Israel Antiquities Authority. So it's like a 2-minute promotional video. I think we can watch this without getting into trouble. So, or at least part of it.
Look at all this really cool stock footage.
All the stock footage. It's very good. Yes.
Footage.
47, their discovery changed history. The Dead Sea Scrolls.
Dun, 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 dun.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are the diamond of archaeological finds in Israel. We're talking about roughly 1,000 manuscripts.
The Dead Sea Scrolls represent a very big part of the...
I actually recognize the thing that they were showing.
Which the text?
Yeah, I recognize this. This reminds me of the Psalm Scrolls because it switches from Hebrew to the old
to Paleo Hebrew. I believe that is 11Q Psalms. Wow, very good, Fish. That's excellent.
Represent a very big part of the literature of the Jewish people. Do you
recognize this guy
after the Hebrew
Schiffman? Yeah.
Scriptures and before the important growth of Christianity in the New Testament.
What the Dead Sea Scrolls did is they pushed back a lot of our understanding of the Hebrew Bible 1,000+ years, and actually showed that transmission.
He's an independent scholar in this video. So yeah, that's interesting. So this one here that you see is this is one of the copies that well, there's a couple different manuscripts on this, but the one I do recognize is a copy of S, the Serach Yachad. Some of the fragments there. So yeah. Press play.
I love that the chat's going off on the word for word thing. You better get that queued up.
The process of the copying over that millennia was remarkably accurate.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
There we go. How was that? Was that pretty good?
Timing.
All right. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, for the first time, you can see these historic artifacts in Washington, D.C., along with other remarkable finds that tell the story of Scripture. Experience them before they are returned to the vaults of the Israel Antiquity Authority for safekeeping. Museum of the Bible invites you on an exclusive journey into the past to witness the words that shaped civilizations.
To be here in Washington, D.C. with all the other great historical museums we have here, but then to interact with our earliest manuscripts from the book.
This is Bobby Duke. You might actually I hold on a second. He is should we do let's do this.
One moment.
So
there we go.
This is the Dead Sea Scrolls fragments in the museum collection. At the Museum of the Bible, and everybody can get the PDF of this book for free. And the reason you can is because it was retracted by the publisher. And you'll notice that Bobby Duke or Robert Duke was at the time he was my co-editor along with Emmanuel Tove of this volume, and at the time was a professor at Azusa Pacific University in Azusa, California. I've been told that Azusa is the best town in the USA from A to Z. Have you heard that?
I mean, I've been to Azusa, the city. It's not that far from here. I can just get on the blue line.
Is it the best town in the USA?
Not
from A to Z?
in my opinion.
So Bobby Duke is now and has been for I think going on 2 years now the curator at the chief curatorial officer at the Museum of the Bible. So he's an interesting guy. He and I were PhD students. He was at UCLA at the same time that I was at Manchester, and we were part of a network on the Pacific coast of scholars on working on the Dead Sea Scrolls. So yeah. Anyways, this picture here. Hold on, before you. Sorry, I have to just back that up a bit because do you know what this is? Any ideas on what we're looking at here?
I mean, it's scroll storage, but I'm not sure which ones particularly.
So this is actual display. This is one of the exhibits at the Museum of the Bible is a like a living sofer comes in to do his Hebrew calligraphy on a regular basis, and he does it in this room that's just surrounded. It's like an octagonal room, and on it is just shelves filled with Torah scrolls. Every single one of these is a kosher Torah scroll, meaning it was a scroll that was retired by a synagogue, and they are cataloged, and I believe at this point for a while now they are officially returned to like a storage place in Israel. And the Museum of the Bible managed to buy a whole bunch of these, 5,000 and counting, in fact. So not all 5,000 are on display, but they have, I mean, what is this? This is like eight scrolls on a shelf. There's probably, yeah, they probably have, a good 250 or 300 of them on display here. In this,
frustrating to me because isn't the Museum of the Bible owned like by evangelical Christians?
Mm-hmm.
That is so frustrating to me, that because Christians have the vast majority of wealth to just spend on this stuff, that they are collecting Torah scrolls just for their little museum exhibit, when there are Jewish communities that would love to get their hands on these scrolls and use them in their community. Because once you retire a scroll, it doesn't mean it's unusable. Like, you can repair scrolls if they get old, or if the ink fades, or if there's like things that happen to it. But this is just so frustrating. It's one of those things, like around Passover for the last several years, there have been issues with Jews not being able to get supplies and foods and things for our Passover seders because Christians want to have Christian seders. And they're buying all our shit. And that's really frustrating. I'm like, look, just okay. Okay.
Just okay. Yeah. All right. Just, I don't know, press play, because it is frustrating.
Change the world is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Look who it is. Yeah.
Hey, Dan, good to see you.
They either make it messianic, meaning it's all about Jesus, or they want to invite a Jewish person in to lead the Seder, which is also frustrating because then they later on will just talk about Jesus. So
yeah,
good times. Yeah. Also, now I feel guilty because I'm behind on all my work. It's fine. I'll get there.
I live in that space.
Love ADHD. Love having it. Love not being able to get treated for it right now because I've had some health insurance stuff. Anyway.
Opportunity.
What secrets do they hold? What stories do they tell? And what do they reveal about the history of the Bible?
Quite a lot, but maybe not.
The Dead.
Maybe not in the way they think they do. So that is what Wes is working in conjunction with the Museum of the Bible on the exhibit, and I do believe that it is this weekend. It might be today. In fact, it might have happened today already. It's definitely over the weekend here that he is leading a special tour group that people could sign up for, probably pay money for, leading a tour group through the exhibit at the Museum of the Bible. He talks about it in this podcast we're going to look at today. So in conjunction with his partnership and his promotion of this exhibit, he's been making the rounds on some really big podcasts. Recently, he was on the Sean Ryan show, which is, and I'd never heard of the Sean Ryan show before Wes was on it, and I think it's a good rule of thumb. I mentioned this to Josh the other day because he's like, I never heard of the Sean Ryan show either. I think it's a good bet that if I haven't heard of it and if Josh hasn't heard of it, then it's really, really popular. So that is, and that seems to track, seems accurate. He did this appearance on the Sean Ryan show that came out, I think 6 weeks ago. And thank you, Apology. I don't think Paul's actually here, but Paul actually keyed me in on this podcast. I wouldn't have found it otherwise because I don't know who the fuck Sean Ryan is. So it's already had more than 2 million views. He went from there to appear on Diary of a CEO, which I have heard of, and the reason I've heard of it is because Greg Kokel was on with Alex O'Connor, Diary of a CEO. So I knew of that one, and that one just came out last week and already has, again, like multiple millions of views. So in the Sean Ryan interview, Wes Huff talks about, he promotes the exhibit at the Museum of the Bible, and he talks about the Dead Sea Scrolls for a bit. I'm a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar, so I like to keep my ear to the ground when it comes to these sorts of things. When it comes to the scrolls in popular media, felt like an appropriate time to sit back and to take a look at this and to talk about some things with respect to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and also probably why you want specialists talking about this stuff and not apologists who are still working on their PhD that hopefully they'll finish at some point, hopefully. The biggest thing Wes has ever said about the Dead Sea Scrolls is a falsehood that he misunderstood from a book by Gleason Archer. He's not a specialist in any sense of the word whatsoever. Thank you. Yeah.
That I am so glad that I had the foresight to download that today.
Yeah, you are.
Specifically what that was.
And since Dan brought it up.
So when you say the book of Isaiah is intact, how similar is it to the book of Isaiah that's in the Bible?
So that one is fascinating. So this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but when we discovered the Great Isaiah Scroll, previous to that, the earliest copy of Isaiah that we had was in the Masoretic text, which is in the Middle Ages.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was literally 1,000 years. We literally pushed back our understanding of Isaiah 1,000 years. And the thing that really shocked scholars, like I said, this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but one of the things that shocked them about Isaiah was that it was word for word identical to the Masoretic text.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Ha tikva.
Wow.
So yeah, we're now. I have to say, I mentioned this to Vish ahead of the show too, and this just happened today. As I was looking over some of my notes, some of my show notes for today, and getting ready for stuff today, I decided to take a bit of a turn. This show is going in a little bit of a different direction than I had originally planned. Something that people don't understand, I feel like, when it comes to, there's many things that people don't have a clear picture of when it comes to the scrolls. But one of the things that I feel like people don't understand, and I think people should have more information about, is the discovery narrative of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the role that the discovery narrative of the scrolls has played in our understanding of the scrolls generally, overall. So we're gonna play around in that sandbox for a little bit. I have no idea how much of this video that we're going to get through. We're going to be stopping it a bunch of times. I think I have some introductory material to the Dead Sea Scrolls on my own channel. I have a playlist called The Dead Sea Scrolls Unapologetically. If you haven't watched it, I encourage you at your leisure to go and check it out. There's over 4 hours of content on it, just dedicated to the topic of the scrolls.
That in chat.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. That's good. So, but we'll look at how I present the discovery narrative and some of the introductory material in that as well. But I think we'll put the video on stage for starters. Yeah, Eva Marocek has a cool new book coming out talking about the found manuscript trope as an authenticating motif, and the scrolls play a prominent role. Yeah, and this is something Ava's been talking about for a long time, and Dan is reading my mind here, because I'm going to do, one of the things we're going to do today is look at an article that Ava wrote back in 2017 on this very topic, which was the the groundwork for a whole book that she's in the process of publishing in the near future. And when that's out, Ava's a friend. I absolutely, I've been trying to figure out a good way of getting her to come on the channel, but that's the best way. When the book is out, I'm hoping that that Ava will come and hang out and talk with us about some of her extremely good work.
StreamYard, which is the platform that we're currently using for these live streams, has an option where you can simulcast in landscape mode, which is the correct way to watch things, or portrait mode for people that want to be on their phone, and so you can watch it vertically, and there's one stream for each, so pick whichever format, but just know that landscape's the correct one.
Fair, true. True. I have no opinion on this at all, except to say that whatever Vish said, I'm sure is probably correct. So yeah, so let's put the video on stage here, and we'll start this section.
All right, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
What are they?
I would have edited that beginning out, just saying, but it's fine.
Can we just pause for a second to marvel at this studio setup? For real.
Guns and liquor.
Like, I don't care about the guns, but holy shit. That is more booze than I've seen in somebody's house in my, I don't think I've ever seen that much booze in someone's house in my entire life before. That is,
the Southern Baptists are absolutely raging.
That is,
have you heard that old joke?
Impressive.
Like, what's the difference between a Southern Baptist and a Methodist? Is that the Methodist will say hello to you at the liquor store.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. Okay.
So the Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of ancient Jewish writings. They were discovered between 1947 and 1956. We have discovered some since then, just fragments. But the story is that there were some Bedouin on the northwest side of the Dead Sea, between the border of Israel and Jordan, and they were herding some sheep, and they discovered these jars full of documents. So in the Roman Jewish Wars, which happened kind of into the mid-late first century, but after Jesus, which also ultimately culminated in 70 AD when Rome, they marched into Jerusalem and they sacked Jerusalem and they destroyed the temple. These Jews went and they hid, kind of maybe knowing that danger was coming, they hid these documents in these caves in the hills along the coast of the northwest side of the Dead.
Question for the teacher.
Yes.
He's, if I'm understanding correctly, he's saying that the Dead Sea Scrolls were taken as a response to like the Roman destruction of Jerusalem and hidden in caves. Am I going crazy that he doesn't seem to be talking about the active community that was there?
See, that is something, and I think, and this is part of the problem, right? When you're a layman, when you're an enthusiast, essentially trying to present on stuff that is not, it's not your wheelhouse. I think he's jumbled a couple things, maybe in his presentation. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here that he's just misspoken and forgotten to mention that part, but it is confusing in his presentation of this, right? It sort of sounds like he's saying that the scrolls came out of Jerusalem and were hidden in the caves, which they were not, or at least if some of them were, we don't know which ones, and probably not many of the entire collection of yeah, thank you, independent expert. That's it. There we go. Thank you very much. So sorry. But most of the scrolls were deposited in the caves by the people who were living there on the western shore of the Dead Sea at a site we call Qumran. Now, importantly, that's not all the Dead Sea Scrolls either. That the Dead Sea Scrolls is an umbrella term that we use to describe all the manuscript finds in the Judean desert, and most of that is from the site of Qumran. That's where most of the manuscripts came from, but importantly, not all of them. There were manuscript discoveries around the same time that they were finding the caves of Qumran, 11 caves of Qumran. They also found caves at Mutabat, which is about 25 kilometers south of the site on the western shore. And then they found manuscripts at Matsuda, and then they found manuscripts at Wadi Seir and Nachal Hever and Wadi Dalia. All these sites together comprise what is called the Dead Sea Scrolls. So, shoot, now I'm here chatting away while Fish left. I can look at some super chats, or not super chats. Well, I have one, but I have a I have a member chat here from Tree Clam Tad. Thanks Tree Clam Tad. It's Friday, time to get mad on the internet, and not just because Kip's here. At least we have Fish. Yes. Bless Vish for being here. And Tree Climb Tad then chimed in to say that Inspiring Philosophy Week is worse than Hell Week. Yes, it would be if it weren't lightened by the fact that that Inspiring Philosophy Week is also the week in which we universally recognize that Michael Jones and Inspiring Philosophy don't know what they're doing or what they're talking about most of the time, and is just generally speaking a poor source of information for many things. All right, so Vish is not back yet. Oh, Now you're back. Sweet.
Sorry.
Excellent. No worries. The Dead Sea Scrolls. I thought these guys didn't like pronouns. That was good.
Okay,
right,
do you want me to keep playing the video?
Yeah, press play for press play for a little bit. Let's get them
see. That's why they call the Dead Sea Scrolls, because that's the location. 11 caves altogether that they were discovered in, probably with the intention to come back and get them when things were a little bit had simmered down, but they got wiped out, and so they never had the chance to go back and get them. So ironically, the arid environment of the region there preserved these things for close to 2,000 years. Man. We discovered them in, like I said, the late 1940s, into the 1950s, and they revealed a ton of around 970 documents in between 10,000 and 11,000 fragments. So some of them are, entire books. Others of them are very, very fragmentary. They need to be pieced together. Now, interestingly enough, the Dead Sea Scrolls are on exhibition at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C.
Yes, they are. Just off the top of your head, would you be able to give us a ratio of sizable manuscripts versus like itty-bitty fragments?
Ratio. So the largest of the manuscripts discovered, and largest in is not intact, is the Temple Scroll. Measures 9 meters in length. So that's in freedom units, I believe that's like 27 feet long. The so-called Great Isaiah Scroll, which is the one that most people are familiar with, is a large intact manuscript that measures 7 meters. So, about 21 to 22 feet long, I believe. And then we have little fragments, tiny smatterings of like hundreds and hundreds of little fragments. The vast majority look like and I should, I could pull up pictures to show too.
Literally, as I was talking, Dan sent this comment in. Some are entire books, Kip. Am I mistaken, or is there only one entire book?
That is an interesting question, a good question. I would say yes, one entire book. I think this also depends on how we're going to define this, because I would say like the All Souls Deuteronomy manuscript maybe counts as also an intact entire book. This is a copy of the Song of Moses from the book of Deuteronomy. I actually think it may not be entirely intact, but yeah, no, you're right about this, Dan. We have precious few, that being one or maybe two out of hundreds of intact, complete books, right? What we have are fragments of a variety, multiple different manuscripts of all sorts of different shapes and sizes. I've talked about some of this stuff before on this channel, and I'll talk a little bit more about this today. But yeah, it's a good point.
Right.
Oh, really?
Right now.
Wow.
And I will actually be giving a tour on March 28th of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So if people are listening and this goes out in time, you can actually have a tour of the Dead Sea Scrolls with me and my partner.
Could you imagine?
Offense intended. There is no one I would rather take a tour of the Dead Sea Scrolls with less.
That rhymes. Less rhymes with Wes. By the way.
It does.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
Probably not intentionally, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
Partnership with the Museum of the Bible. But otherwise, I think it's worth seeing. I think These are
I do too.
Probably the most important archaeological discovery of the 20th century.
Wow.
And they shed so much light on ancient Judaism leading up to the time of Jesus, in understandings of different Jewish thought and practice, but also every book of the Bible, apart from 2 of the Old Testament, was discovered in these. And some of them were so well preserved that what they did is they pushed back our understanding of the text of the Bible close to 1,000 years, sometimes even further than that. Because for a long time, our copies of particularly the Hebrew Old Testament, so we had translations, like I've referred to the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Those have existed for a long time. It's called the Septuagint, is one of the main streams.
I also want to note, even though he didn't say it, is that it wasn't just all but 2 of the books that we consider canon of the Hebrew Bible. There were also books that aren't canon for more than maybe 1 or 2 communities that are still active today. Like, there are versions of the Book of Jubilees found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and unless you're part of like the Ethiopian Tawahedo church tradition, that's not a part of your canon. So I'm not sure why he wouldn't mention those books. Wink.
Well,
wink.
I mean, they're some of this is inconvenient, correct? So, depending on your theological outlook. So, yeah, it's I think we'll listen. I think he says something here about in the next minute or so about the composition of the collection. Tobit, yes, we have.
You know what? Actually, this is a good point. I should say that the text of the book is preserved in the canon. Not in the canon, in
Right.
the language of the Ethiopian church. So
Right.
I don't know if
Correct.
that it's canon, but it is preserved in
Certainly
full.
1 Enoch. And in addition, other texts like, yes, Simone mentioned Tobit. We have copies of Tobit in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We also have copies of, yes, thank you, Katie.
Sarah.
Ben Sira was found in pretty exciting actually, because we have Hebrew Ben Sira at a fragment at Qumran, and actually a fairly extensive amount of material at Matzadah for Ben Sira. Which I think is pretty cool. His claim might work if he was advocating for a Bible with all the Dead Sea text included. Then it would make sense to say we found almost all the Bible, but finding Bible plus 70% extended universe.
Universe.
Yeah, it's a lot of that, and it's very it becomes extremely complicated, right? When you start to venture into questions about the nature of the collection and the types of texts that were there and why they were there. This all has like fundamental implications for our understanding of what the Bible even is, and it's naive to set your focus, to limit your focus on these 44 books of the Protestant Old Testament, of the Jewish Tanakh. So weird how First Enoch isn't in canon. The New Testament makes zero sense as a bridge to the Hebrew Bible without it. It would certainly help a great deal
to be honest,
if that were included. Because there's an awful. I mean, I think it's not. I don't think there's any question that all the early Christians were not just familiar with, but very, very, they loved the Book of Enoch, as did the people who wrote and collected the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was an extremely popular book in first century Judaism. So, press play for a little bit. Okay, don't give them ideas. You don't want to see.
Don't give them ideas. I mean, look, they already do this.
Fair.
I've seen it.
That's
I've
true.
seen evangelicals go, yeah, I mean, it's not canon, But and then they'll just start pulling lore from it and then treating that as if it's, you know, they're an accurate representation of things, or they'll say, you know what, I think they're onto something here, and it's like, just that's the way canon works. Like, you're using it for your theology. Come on, just be honest about it. Anyway,
all right. Of the Greek translation of the Old Testament, most people in the time of Jesus were speaking and reading Greek if they were able to read, because that was the lingua franca, the language of the day. And so about 200 years.
They were also,
I mean, across the empire, this was the lingua franca. But within Palestine, I think a number of people could speak Greek. But I mean, but the language of Palestine was Aramaic at the time of Jesus. And we know this from the epigraphic record, from not just the scrolls are a bit of a unicorn when it comes to understanding the literary sorry, I should say the landscape of literacy in Palestine. Most people just couldn't read or write, period. Those that could read or write were writing either in Hebrew or in Aramaic, a small handful probably in Greek, but a very, very tiny amount. It's a complicated picture of literacy and language in Palestine where these texts were discovered.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, people were engaging with the text in Aramaic and Hebrew. They were using Hebrew in their liturgies. So it's not like that just evaporated, and it's frustrating to hear. I've heard some of people who should know better say, like, oh, well, they didn't speak Hebrew, or they couldn't read it, they didn't know what it said. I'm like, dude, they were literally reading it in the synagogues every week.
Yeah.
Part of the New Testament is Jesus picking up a scroll and reading it. So, what?
Indeed, Simone. How does he not know Aramaic?
I was gonna say, is that Eich hu lo yadai Aramit?
Yeah.
Did I get that somewhat?
You did get
close?
it right. It's pretty good. Very good. Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, also, hi, Paul. He says all Hebrew fishermen could fluently write Greek. How else could they sell fish?
Yes. That's good.
Of course.
Awesome.
Think of that.
Prior to Jesus, a bunch of the books, particularly the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, were translated from the Hebrew into the Greek. And then as time went on, more and more books were translated of the Old Testament into Greek. So that started about the 3rd century BC. It didn't really finish until the 1st century AD. But
or maybe even later.
Hebrew copies of most of the Old Testament were from the Middle Ages for a long, long time.
Wow.
And
also, I think that also requires us to clarify exactly what dates count as Middle Ages, because there might be a colloquial misunderstanding. When people hear Middle Ages, they probably think, oh, that's like 1400. But it also goes back further than that.
quite a bit back further. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have some scraps of Hebrew manuscripts that date all the way back, like biblical manuscripts that date all the way back to like the 7th, 6th century CE. I'll talk about one when we put my video up. I will mention another really important manuscript, a Hebrew manuscript from the 2nd century BCE, which prior to the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was the oldest known copy of a biblical text in Hebrew. And that would be the Nash Papyrus, owned by the University of Cambridge. But just a cool text. It's really interesting. So yeah, go maybe a little bit more. And
what the Dead Sea Scrolls did is all of a sudden we have pre-1st century copies of some of these books. and we're able to compare them, to compare something like the Great Psalm Scroll or the Great Isaiah Scroll with copies of what's called the Masoretic text, which is the text of the Hebrew Bible from the Middle Ages, copied by these scribes, the Masoretes, and they're surprisingly similar, shockingly similar. Some of them are exact.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
It's never gonna get old.
Surprisingly
Ugh.
similar. No, I mean it's it's a movement, right?
I concur with
This
chat
is
that you
moving in
should
the right
make that into a
direction.
t-shirt. Word for word? Word for word.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we need it. Maybe we need a shirt. The chat has some excellent shirt ideas that I just can't get off my ass
Do it.
to do it. But yeah,
Similar, shockingly similar. Some of them are exact. Not all of them are. But the test.
In fact, as
say the line, Bart.
pause it. So and yeah, I feel like
word for word.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
None of them. Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to talk about, we have tiny fragments that you can align perfectly with the Masoretic text, but because we've only got a couple lines of text, right? That's not difficult. I mean, that's not unexpected either, I don't think. But when it comes to some more substantive material from the finds, and when it comes to the biblical texts in that material, there's nothing that is identical to the Masoretic text. That's sort of the thing, is that there are minute differences, but differences nonetheless in virtually every fragment, every manuscript, I should say, of the Bible. Word for word is haunting him. It.
As it should. This is why you don't go on one of the biggest platforms on the planet right now and say incorrect stuff.
Yeah, it's true. It's what you should not do. So
let not many of you become podcasters, knowing you will incur the greater judgment.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's in the scripture somewhere.
Testimony of the fidelity between the time when we get something like the Leningrad Codex in the Middle Ages to something like the Dead Sea Scrolls is a huge gap. And yet you have now evidence of this faithful copying process over the centuries of scribes, to the point where you can follow them, to the letter and see.
I think I know what you're going to say, but
let's put this away for a minute.
Same page again. My joke to you. Seriously. And yeah, at least Apologia got my reference. Let not many of you become podcasters. Like, statistically, every North American host 2.3.
I wish.
I was just saying this
I
last night.
understood
We need to gatekeep more things. You should have to pass a literacy and
true
comprehension test in order to get a podcast, honestly.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Very true. Okay. So this is you wanna let's put my video up.
Okay.
Because this is why I made the series in the first place. Who is that young man? Holy cow. Hard to believe that.
Wow,
was
their
3
hair
years
is really
ago.
short. I don't know if I trust them.
No, right? It's weird. But this is the apologetic, right? The apologetic, when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, is that their value is in how they attest to the fidelity of the copying habits of Jewish scribes. Insofar as the apologists are concerned, that's all they care about, I'm convinced. Do these texts match what's in the Masoretic text? For some reason they've glommed onto that one, right? And for them, that's the benchmark, that's the standard, and that's the only thing they care about. Does this match to the later Masoretic text? It's tragic and it's insulting because the Dead Sea Scrolls are so much more interesting than just how well scribes were able to reproduce the minutia of their exemplars. And to that point, they just didn't. While it's true that we have plenty of manuscripts within the larger collection of the Dead Sea Scrolls that do look close to the Masoretic text, we have a whole fuck ton that do not. And this is where this story, I feel like, needs to be told. This is a story about pluriformity. This is a story about variability. This is a story about how this ancient collection of literature developed out of this landscape where there were all sorts of different versions and copies and renditions of things floating around. So I asked Vish to pull this up because I thought I have this whole series. This is no, that's the wrong video, actually. Sorry, that says 1.2. It should be 1.1. Whoopsies. That is, which one's that? Yeah, that's it. There we go. Okay. And
I was just seeing if you were paying attention.
Oh, thank you. That's good. So, so this is the first video in my series where I start talking about the discovery of the scrolls and the significance of the scrolls and how I lay this out. If you want to, the story of the Dead Sea Scrolls usually begins with the Bible. It is not because all or even most of the scrolls were biblical texts. They were not. Rather, this is because it appears that what we know as the Bible was on some level integral to the existence of the scrolls in the first place. But now the scrolls have become essential to our understanding of the Bible and the trajectory of biblical scholarship since their discovery. In this video series, I want to challenge some of the ways in which we think about this relationship and to show that our own preconceptions of what the Bible is has from the beginning deeply affected the ways in which scholars have researched and published the Dead Sea Scrolls, often on the basis of an anachronistic modern appraisal of the Bible. So we're going to get to all that, but for now we begin with the Bible. The discovery of the scrolls is a well-known tale, and it is something that we will reflect back upon throughout. Can you pause it for a second? Because I think I want to. I hope everybody caught that what I'm getting at, and this is something I continue to push on a regular basis. The thing that frustrates me, and in fact, when I made this first video, I sent the script out to a couple of friends. One of them being Matt Monger at MF Norwegian School of Theology. And his very first response to me was like, this is good, but why are you starting with the Bible? Because this is something that he and I have certainly talked a lot about. This is something that he and I both write a fair bit about when it comes to our own published work on the scrolls. Is this hegemony that the canon seems to have on just the production of scholarship in terms of the scrolls? Is the starting point seems to be the Bible, and then everything else sort of circulates around that. And it's an unfortunate way of understanding the material. I think that our appraisal of the collection, if we never even knew that the Bible existed at the time when the scrolls were discovered in 1947, how different would our appraisal of the whole collection be without the guidance of knowing or thinking we know which texts were in and out of this canon? How does that affect the ways in which the material is approached, presented, studied, and presented?
It takes up all the air in the room. It really does. This is something that I think I've mentioned this before, but when I was in a class, we got to the Psalm 145, I think it is, the Ashrei, which is, famous acrostic. Each line starts with a Hebrew letter, except for the letter Nun. It doesn't have, a line of poetry or whatever in there. And our teacher was like, oh, well, it is in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'm like, oh, so I reached out to you and was like, hey, can I get a copy of this? I want to read it. And then I went looking for papers because I was like, hey, other people surely must be talking about this particular version of the psalm. And when I found papers, the first 3 to 5 that I was able to come up with, all they were talking about was whether it's canon or not. And I don't care about canon. This is a call and response liturgical text where they have taken something we're familiar with and added a response line after every stanza or whatever. And I was like, nobody's talking about this because all they want to talk about is canon. I don't care.
Yeah.
Why are we arguing about something that wouldn't have been relevant to them? It wouldn't have even been in their frame of reference.
Exactly.
So that was really frustrating. And it's like, this is why when you get these texts, you really need to start with asking the right kinds of questions, because otherwise you're going to just go off in some irrelevant tangent that wouldn't have even been in their conceptual framework.
No, it's very good, and you're picking up exactly what I'm putting down here. I just wanted to Tree Clam Tad says someone photoshopped the screen behind young Kip and have the fake fragment Wes made for Rogan to have the fake fragment.
I mean, it was a reproduction. No, that it was fake.
But I want to point out that this the text that is on the screen behind me is 1Q Isaiah B, which is the less famous cousin of 1Q Isaiah A. But so that's the frustration of entering this conversation about the manuscripts from the categories that we've inherited. Essentially, I'm going to start talking now about the discovery narrative, and I want to spend some time thinking through some of this for today's stream.
Okay. Do you want me to continue playing this, or
let's continue. There are problems with how this story continues to be told. The story of the Bedouin shepherds from the Ta'amira tribe who found the first of the Dead Sea Scrolls has become part of collective imagination in Western culture. The story has become a classic discovery narrative in its many retellings, replete with highly recognizable cultural tropes. The naive and unsophisticated Arabs, the accidental happenstance of discovery, and the remarkable good fortune of virtuous Western academics who rescued the scrolls from destruction or loss. The story of the discovery of the scrolls has really become a vehicle for promoting their significance for whomever is telling it, whether that be scholars, apologists, the state of Israel, or even the Bedouin themselves, who were mostly determined to profit from their sale. But it is important to note that we have reasons to be suspicious about the accuracy of the trade narrative at several points. In view of this, let us begin with what we have been told happened. As the story goes, at some point in late 1946 or early 1947, a young man, Muhammad Ahmed El Hamad, also known as Edib the Wolf, threw a rock into a cave in the cliffs By the way,
Mm.
pause
on
it
the
for a
northwest shore of the
second.
Dead Sea.
that was actually Cave 11. The picture there was not Cave 1. It was Cave 11. But I like, if you caught it, I said this happened sometime in late 1946 or early 1947. Like, our knowledge about what happened, our information about how things transpired are sketchy to the point that we can't even pinpoint this date when this happened, when these Ta'amira young men happened upon Cave 1 and discovered the contents inside. By the way, I'll say this now. A lot of the information for this comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls: A Full History, Volume 1 by Weston W. Fields. Weston unfortunately passed away before completing Volume 2, and I'm not sure what the publication plans are for that. This is Volume 1 is 1947 to 1960. So it covers all this early stuff, but it's quite a good resource. There are issues with it in that I think Weston is too sympathetic to certain key actors in this story. It's not as balanced an historical appraisal as I would have liked. It's a different kind of historical appraisal than I would have written, but it's an incredibly important resource, and that's something that he keys in on in the book, is that insofar as the discovery narrative is concerned, insofar as the story that's told with respect to the discovery of the scrolls, there are many problems. There are huge holes in what we have been told and what we think we know about it. And I think that's part of a larger picture and a different kind of discussion that should be ongoing when it comes to understanding and appraising the value of these artifacts.
I mean, it's not like anything really important in history was happening around 1946 and 47 anyway,
Shall we find out?
Just another year on the calendar.
Where he was tending herds in the late afternoon near the ruins of Khirbat Qumran. He heard the shattering sound of broken pottery. Edib summoned his cousins with him, Juma Muhammad and Khalil Musa, to investigate. And then early the next morning, Edib entered the cave on his own.
I just want to say that is a extremely well manicured mustache, and I want to give him credit for that.
Wow, isn't it great? Yeah.
Like, precision. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
The gate.
Mm-hmm.
And then early the next morning, Edib entered the cave on his own and saw 2 intact jars among the broken remains of pottery, from which he removed 3 leather bundles. These were later identified as an intact scroll containing all of Isaiah, the partial remains of a commentary on Habakkuk, and the so-called Serach Hayachad, a community rule which contained teachings and dictates for governing a Jewish religious sect. Juma and Khalil were displeased by their younger companions' eagerness to scout the cave without them, and this probably played into their decision to cut him out from their efforts later to sell the scrolls that they had found. In the meantime, the 3 scrolls were stored in a bag suspended from a tent pole at the Bedouin camp on the outskirts of Bethlehem for weeks or months.
Were you going to say something?
Yeah. No, that's one of the very interesting parts of this story to me too, right? Is the distance in time from when the manuscripts were actually recovered out of the caves to the point in time when they actually made their way to Bethlehem. where they were sold to Kendo, the antiquities dealer slash cobbler in Bethlehem. This is we have no idea, right? We're told that they just kept them in a satchel and hung them on a tent peg, like on a tent pole in the camp. For we don't know how long they just traveled around doing as the Bedouin do, and transported this material with them before ending up in Bethlehem. These are just the best tents, by the way. I love these.
Yeah.
We shall return to the Bedouin and this discovery later. But for now, we're going to focus our attention on one of these first 3 manuscripts.
Actually, can you
the most
can we go to I'm just trying to think here. If yeah, jump ahead to the 8-minute mark, I think. Let's go there.
We were almost
Oh, were we almost there?
Yeah.
Really? Oh,
I'm just
okay.
gonna let it play. We were literally 5
famous
seconds
of all the
there.
Dead Sea Scrolls, the so-called Great Isaiah Scroll. It is kind of interesting that these 3 scrolls together in very broad strokes represent almost a microcosm of how scholars have organized the entire collection of what would come to be known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a copy of a known biblical text. There is a scroll that contains the biblical text along with extensive and detailed interpretation, and there is a scroll that is dedicated to the life and theology of the community that collected the scrolls and potentially also wrote many of them. The Great Isaiah Scroll is so called because it is the largest intact biblical manuscript to survive from the Second Temple period. That is the roughly 585-year period of the Temple of Yahweh in Jerusalem that is traditionally thought to have stood from around 515 BCE until the final destruction of the completely renovated and expanded structure of Herod the Great in 70 CE. And while there is good reason to believe that the Jerusalem temple was probably not constructed so early, the late 6th century BCE is a sufficient starting point for our designation of the Second Temple period. At the time of the scroll's discovery, virtually everything known about the text of the Old Testament stemmed from Hebrew and Aramaic manuscripts written no earlier than the 10th century and a smattering of earlier small fragments. Greek translations of the Old Testament published by the church starting in the 2nd century, and a handful of older fragments, 1st or 2nd century BCE, of the Greek text of the Old Testament, otherwise known as the Septuagint. To put this into sharper perspective, prior to the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947, the oldest, arguably one of the most important biblical manuscripts was this, the Nash Papyrus.
There it is.
This is a single papyrus sheet measuring 13 by 7 centimeters and contains a version of the 10 Commandments, blending text from Exodus 21 to 17 with Deuteronomy 5, 6 to 21, and the so-called Shema from Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. This papyrus sheet was acquired by a biblical scholar from an antiquities dealer in Egypt in 1902, and it dates somewhere between the late 2nd century BCE and the 1st century CE. Suddenly, now within months of Ed Dibb's discovery, the first Western scholars to see the Great Isaiah Scroll, John C. Trevor, and my own Dr. Vatter's Dr. Vatter, would that make him my Dr. Grossvater? William S. Brownlee,
Not even sure.
found themselves looking at an intact scroll at least as old as the Nash Papyrus, but over 100 times the size. Trevor and Brownlee were postdoctoral students working at the American School for Oriental Research, otherwise known as ASOR, in East Jerusalem. when they received word in February 1948 from a Syrian Orthodox bishop, Mar Athanasius Samuel, about this ancient document that he had purchased from an intermediary between its Bedouin discoverers and himself, which he was unable to decipher. He was actually looking for help from their supervisor, the great Professor Miller R. Burroughs, who happened to be on an archaeological excavation in Iraq at the time, leaving the center in the care of the two postdoctors. Brownlee and Trevor were able to correctly identify the samples of text that they saw with Isaiah and correctly dated the manuscript on the basis of pictures they had on hand of the Natch Papyrus. Within weeks,
That's all.
Trevor,
Hold on a
budding
sec, if I
amateur
could just
photographer,
say,
had managed to capture the
their identification of 1Q Isaiah A, as well as the amateur paleography that they did on the fly by looking at pictures of the Nash Papyrus. That was all done on the night that they first saw the Great Isaiah Scroll. So which I think
Also,
is pretty great. Yeah.
I just checked this. The Nash Papyrus is approximately the size of a 3x5 index card.
Yeah, it's tiny. So
It is
it's
not big.
Nope. It's not. So, and it's my edition of 1Q Isaiah A has a portrait of Mar Athanasius Samuel at the front, which is very nice. Yes, that is very nice. So the Nash Papyrus as well, and this is a manuscript that I had started doing some work on in my last postdoc before I ran out of funding, and I never finished the project. But it's a text that I would like to get back to because it is really interesting. I don't know if you saw it there. It's a blending of different versions of the Ten Commandments along with the Shema. So everything's kind of interspliced with one another, and it seems to be quite old. Although I think there's a possible reason to challenge that it is as early as it's thought to be. It might not be 2nd century. It might be 1st century BCE. But it's also it's this small surviving sheet. But it's just that, right? Like this was just a manuscript of the Ten Commandments that somebody had for some reason. Probably I think it probably had some sort of ritual function, or maybe an apotropaic function. It was part of something ceremonial or something wooey, right? You got texts are magical, and you carry them around with you, and you use them in certain circumstances and contexts in order to protect you from evil spirits and people
love folk magic.
They sure do. They sure do. So
Play Lizard writes, you can put a lot of words on an index card, as every college student knows, or used to know.
We don't use those anymore, do we?
Well, if you're not a lazy sumbitch, you put them on an index card instead of trying to use ChatGPT for everything.
Oh, Chuck wants
I put up the
woke units now.
It's 3x5.
That's the freedom units, though. In the woke units, it's like
13 by 7.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right. Press play.
But yeah, this is the thing: is like Simone is adding, could it be a mezuzah or something like that?
Yes,
Philo doesn't seem
something
to
like
know
that,
about,
right?
Like mezuzah and tefillin as they're commonly understood, but there could be something there. That was my first thought. Is maybe someone's carrying this around similarly to tefillin or a mezuzah.
Yeah.
And $2 super chat. What is up, Pat? Did someone say magic? Now you've got my attention.
Yes, sir.
13 by 7. What? Potato centimeters.
There's a couple more before that. Did you catch those?
I didn't realize. Okay.
Oh.
I mean, there's
maybe
some
that happened when you were gone.
comments, but
no, there's super chats from Jennifer Silvas, and yeah, there we go. Freedom units.
Laughing. Treatment had the biggest problem with watching a reaction video to Wes is that I tune mediocre men out so easily that I lose the context of the discussion.
Oh, that's sad. I'm sorry. So I guess that means Vish needs to do more talking.
Apology asked, did Kip show the part where Sean gave Wes a handgun with a silencer
Oh,
to take across the
Jesus.
border? What?
What the fuck? No, I didn't. Honestly, Paul, like I said, you had sent me this video and I just like scanned the chapters to look for something interesting and I ended up here. So now I have to go back and look. That's terrifying.
Huff thinks Hebrew is an identifiable language with identifiable Hebrew names at least as far back as the 18th century BCE. His reliability outside the New Testament leaves a lot to be desired.
To be desired.
Yeah. So. And then Dan, before he left to go give the keynote for Barterman's conference, says Wes never brings up Jeremiah fragments that witness to the shorter rearranged Septuagint version. He never brings up 4:2 Deuteronomy J.
These are the two texts that preserve the B'nai Elohim. One preserves the B'nai Elohim reading from Deuteronomy 32:8-9, but then the other one preserves the longer Septuagint version. Well, it's even longer. The Septuagint version. It's like a very long version of the last verses of Deuteronomy 32.
He's quite literally talking about that exact passage yesterday.
It's excellent. Yeah. So
okay.
We go. All right.
Back to
a little bit more of this, and then I want to talk about
Higher scroll in vivid, newly invented Kodak color. The great Isaiah
hold on a second. Sorry, I just have to say this because some of the things that are also very interesting to me about the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls is how much the discovery was part of an advent of new technology in the in biblical studies. Some of the earliest C14 tests performed anywhere in the world were performed on the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls were proving ground for the viability of radiocarbon dating. Like, think about that. And I believe that happened in 1951 or 52, I think is when that happened. It was groundbreaking, right?
Oh, wait. Didn't we change the catchphrase from Checkmate Atheists? What did we change it to? We just did this. I think it was on Dapper Dinosaur's channel the other day.
I'm never paying attention when we're streaming with Dapper,
I'm gonna
so
tell him
I
you said
wouldn't
that.
know. Okay. Because he's not watching. We know that much. But so C14 dating. What I just said there too. The scrolls were photographed with Kodak color film, which was like brand new in 1947. Did you find it?
Thank you, Callisto. Good luck, Mr. Evolutionist. That's what it was.
Very good. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was on the stream with
now,
Dan and Dapper and Erica this week. Yeah. There we go. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So some of the scrolls, the first photographs of the scrolls were color photographs. At a time when color photography was brand spanking new. And it's I don't know, this is exciting and interesting stuff to me. Anyways, press play.
Okay.
Word of the 66 chapters of Isaiah, stretching over 17 finely prepared parchment sheets in 54 columns of around 30 lines and measuring a total of 7.34 meters or 24 feet. The manuscript was clearly bifurcated in the center at the end of the 27th column between chapters 33 to 34 and was written and corrected by at least 2 scribes. Word of the discovery of the scroll spread, and with it, the sudden realization that this was going to fundamentally alter the landscape of biblical and Judaic studies. Immediately upon developing photographs of the manuscript, Trevor sent a sampling to the greatest living expert of Semitic languages, Johns Hopkins professor William F. Albright, with a request to please provide his own expert opinion about the date and authenticity of the text. On the 15th of March, 1948, Albright's response was
I could be
received
wrong.
in Jerusalem.
Hold on. I
My
gotta
heartiest
say this because
congratulations.
I'm a funny guy. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure Johns Hopkins, that's like it's like a diploma mill. I believe a school of ill repute. I don't know. Somebody should ask.
I can't help but notice you didn't include Strong's glossary in there, Josh.
Damn it. I knew I missed one.
We're so funny.
For those of you that don't know, Dr. Josh got one of his degrees at Johns Hopkins.
His terminal degree, his
Mhm.
PhD comes from Johns Hopkins. Where Albright.
Johns Hopkins?
Johns
Not John Hopkins?
Not John
letting
Hopkins.
you know.
There is
Some
a
of those things
John
that make my eyes
Hopkins
twitch.
that I've seen around in the chat before. So always makes me smile. So yeah. William Albright from Johns Hopkins University, the greatest living epigrapher back in 1947.
All right, shall we continue?
Yes.
On the greatest manuscript discovery of modern times. There's no doubt in my mind that the script is more archaic than that of the Nash Papyrus. I should prefer a date around 100 BC. What an absolutely incredible find, and there can happily not be the slightest doubt in the world about the genuineness of the manuscript.
Over the course of the next decade, tens of thousands of fragments were found belonging to about 900 individual manuscripts extracted from 11 caves in a 1.5 kilometer radius. Significantly, all of the manuscripts were written over a roughly 350-year period between about 250 BCE to 100 CE. All were written in Hebrew and Aramaic, with a handful in Greek, and between 200 to 300 appear to be copies of text known from our modern Bibles. You will notice as we continue through our exploration of these so-called biblical scrolls that my numbers for them are not precise. And the reason for this is because there are varying opinions, not only on what counts as a biblical scroll, but also on how many of them there actually are what we would call Dead Sea Scrolls. For example, a few years back, I gave a university talk in which I identified
That's an even
220
younger version of me.
I don't know who this is with the lack of beard and the fade here going on, but they look like they hate the Bible and aren't trustworthy.
I'm wearing a blazer.
Instant credibility. Meanwhile,
And my
Dan
Punisher
McClellan
t-shirt, but,
shows
you
up
know.
to literally give papers at SBL in a t-shirt and like gym pants.
I started that.
He's
you
just
know.
like, I don't care.
I started that. I did that before Dan ever did. By the way,
Okay.
I'm just saying that.
Let's see y'all duke it
Just
out.
saying.
What a hipster thing to say. But also, that's a
I
good
know.
haircut. Shout out to your barber.
I liked that haircut
That's a
back
good haircut.
back at the time. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So
manuscripts as biblical on the basis of how scrolls from the 11 Qumran caves.
By the way, this
have been
particular
designated.
Also, your Punisher
lecture,
shirt.
by the way,
Just giving you props for that.
Thank you. This particular lecture, by the way, I have a playlist on my channel of all my lectures that have been uploaded to YouTube. So this is in there. You can actually go and watch this one over there. But yeah.
By scholars. In 2013, Peter Flint counted 318, including biblical manuscripts discovered in other sites in the Judean deserts, which date to around the same period, but then also dozens of manuscript fragments for sale on antiquities markets or in private collections, most of which have now been determined to be forgeries. Among these manuscripts, every book of the Jewish Hebrew Bible or the Protestant Old Testament was accounted for except for the book of Esther. For most evangelical observers, the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls generally, and the Great Isaiah Scroll in particular, has been a source of tremendously useful apologetic ammunition.
Okay, let's stop it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Evangelicals and apologists love the Dead Sea Scrolls when it lines up with what they already believe. But if it challenges one of their theologies, well, we prioritize the Masoretic text because that's the one that got preserved the most often. So clearly that's the one that God wanted us to have. Just come on.
So let's drop the video because I want to talk about, and yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to detract from exactly. That is exactly the right point. And this is exactly what Westhoff is doing in this interview, is promoting this apologetic trope about what the scrolls are and what they do. But I want to come back to the discovery narrative. And I actually thought it was in this video, but it didn't. I think it's in a different video. I tell the story of the discovery over the course of the entire series by design, because I think the story of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls is integral to how we understand the Dead Sea Scrolls. And you mentioned it very significantly. The scrolls were discovered on the eve of the end of the Mandate of Palestine. The British Mandate of Palestine ended in May 1947. It was when it was announced. And sorry, no, it was announced. It was literally announced very close to the time that the first American scholars saw the scrolls in February of 1947. The last British troops pulled out of Israel in May 1947. And then it was on November 29th, 1947, that the United Nations voted on to recognize the independent sovereign state of Israel. It was also on that same night that, and I've told the story in a few places, it was also on that same night that professor of archaeology at the Hebrew University, Eliezer Sukenik, read in his study the contents of the Hodayot, one of the copies of the Dead Sea Scrolls that he had just purchased and taken back to his house on Mount Scopus with him, reading this manuscript while listening to the radio broadcast of the announcement of the state of Israel. The history of the Dead Sea Scrolls is absolutely intertwined with this national project in the state of Israel. It's a huge part of that. Very shortly, almost immediately after the declaration of the state of Israel, one of the first things they did was to nationalize everything, including the Dead Sea Scrolls. And thereafter, started like a years-long, very interesting story, pursuit, I guess, of getting all the material that had been distributed to various people back into the state of Israel, back under Israeli control. And it's a very, I think, with varying results, perhaps. But we have to talk a little bit about this story of discovery and how it fits in with the discovery narrative, the stories that scholars tell about how artifacts and manuscripts are found. Yeah, maybe before we do that, I saw that we have another super chat, I think, from Dave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, oh yes.
What happened to that bright-eyed young scholar?
I saw answers to that question too, which were on point. Katie Lewis points out that yes, became old and bitter. So, and yeah, it's true. It's true, Tad. Who hasn't? I guess if you're not old, maybe you haven't become old and bitter yet. So, yeah. So, anyways, this story that's told about the young the young Bedouin shepherds who find the scrolls and take them eventually to the cobbler in Bethlehem, Kando, who, you know, in some versions of the story, we are told that Kando purchased, or sorry, that the Bedouin sold the scrolls, but took them to Kando, a cobbler, thinking that he might make good use of the leather on which these
Can you
texts were written.
imagine?
Yeah. But it's not all that different, and this is kind of what I'm getting at here too. There's another famous manuscript discovery which happened in and around the same time out in Egypt at a place called Nag Hammadi. They discovered a whole bunch of codices, early Christian books, and the way that story is told, the Egyptian discoverers are out digging in the desert for fertilizer. They find these books and decide the first thing they decide to do is that they collect them and take them home with them, and tossed a couple of them into the fireplace to heat their house, thinking that they would make good fuel for. And these are shocking stories, right, to our modern sensibilities, our Western sensibilities. I don't know though how much of this is the point of these stories, of why they're told. So Dan mentioned, and I'm very happy he did, Dan mentioned Eva Morochik, who has written on this, and there we go, and has a book coming out about the found manuscript trope as an authenticating motif. So she gave this paper that we're going to look at today at a conference that I participated at in 2017. This is, by the way, it's at an excellent site. People should check it out. This is the Marginalia Review of Books. If you don't know it, I used to be operated under the auspices of the LA Times. I don't think it is anymore, but we published our conference papers on this forum. You can see mine there: Gleanings from the Cave of Wonders, Fragments, Forgeries, and Biblicism in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Ava's paper is titled Batshit Stories, New Tales of Discovering Ancient Texts. And then there's a couple more here I'll draw your attention to. Simonides' New Testament Papyri, Their Production and Purported Provenance, by Tommy Wasserman. It's a lot of P's, isn't it? And Roberta Manza's Property of a Gentleman, The Market of Ancient Manuscripts and the Problem of something. And then one more from Nicola Denzi Lewis at Brown University, Still Rethinking the Origins of the Nag Hammadi Codices. So she's keying in on some of these same things that Ava points out in her wonderful paper here, Batshit Stories, Tales of Discovering Ancient Texts. She begins with telling with this bit from the short story Forevermore. Yeah, let's embiggen it. I'm just gonna do
hopefully
it like
get
that.
rid of David Wolpe's face on the screen. Beautiful.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you.
Isn't that good?
Because he kind of sucks.
Yes, true. Well, a lot of people suck. It's true. So
he sucks for some very specific reasons.
Yes. So I'll just read the introduction and then pull out some selections of this paper to talk through this issue. In his short story Forevermore, Israeli writer S.Y. Agnon relates the story of a scholar, Adiel Amza, Amza has spent his whole life studying a destroyed city whose ancient chronicle, the book of Gumladata, has been forever lost, or so he thinks. He's about to publish his life's work, a reconstruction of the details of how the city's walls were breached. But as he is about to go meet his publisher, he receives a visit from an old nurse, Ada Eden, looking for old books to take to the leper hospital. It comes out that the lost chronicle of Gumladata has been at the leper hospital all along. When the city was destroyed, its count, who had the book, was sold into slavery. Then he left for dead and taken by the lepers. At first, Amza thinks that the nurse is telling a tall tale. But in the end, he follows Ada Eden to the leper hospital and finds the book. The volume is barely legible, decayed and moldy, and looks as if it was written on the skin of a leper, not with ink, but with pus. Amza must put on protective gloves just to touch the contaminated book. He stays there working forevermore to decipher the book, joining letter to letter and word to word, but he will never send his work to the world outside the leper hospital. The book never reached the hands of the living. Why begin with a work of fiction in a forum on real discovery stories? One answer might be to highlight that there is always an element of fictionality, of storytelling in how we recount the provenance of ancient sources. It is well known now that the story of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, like that of the Nag Hammadi codices, circulated in several versions. Scholars are still not clear on exactly when these artifacts were found, and in the case of the Dead Sea Scrolls, even the identity of the original discoverer, the shepherder, Muhammad ed-Dib, is murky. According to Weston Fields, 2 different men in the 1990s claim to be the original ed-Dib, and the story itself, in the form that has become canonical, contains motifs familiar from older narratives. These motifs, such as the animal that leads the way, might lend themselves to a folkloristic analysis. So this is Ava zeroes in on some of the features of the discovery narrative of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The story can overshadow the actual artifact or manuscript that it is supposed to contextualize. If one asked average people about the Dead Sea Scrolls, they likely won't know much about the texts themselves. They might not know if the texts are Jewish or Christian, what they are about, what language they were written in, and when, or even that they are all published and readily available, not suppressed in secret archives. What they are likely to know is some version of the discovery story. The Dead Sea Scrolls, weren't they found by a shepherd boy in the desert? Didn't a goat go into a cave and find them? It is this narrative that has become the content of the Dead Sea Scrolls in popular imagination, the compelling story in itself. The discovery story is not just a frame in the service of the ancient text. In the public imagination, the ancient text remains largely obscure. More recently,
every good discovery needs a good legend to go with it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Soon after the first Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, one scholar cast doubt upon their authenticity precisely because of their origin story. Solomon Zeitlin, editor of Jewish Quarterly Review, was convinced that the entire discovery was a hoax. Not only were there multiple versions of the provenance narrative, but its major contours, a Bedouin shepherd discovering scrolls concealed in a cave, had a whiff of myth about it. The notorious 19th century forger Moses Shapira, who tried to sell fragments of a rough draft of the Book of Deuteronomy, That's true. Are you familiar with this?
God, a freaking rough draft.
No, it's yeah. This is the fragments that Moses Shapiro almost certainly forged or came into possession from the forger are of like it would be like a monumental discovery. It was thought that these dated to the 6th century BCE, 6th or 7th century BCE, and these were like an ancient form of the book of Deuteronomy. Prior to our version of the book of Deuteronomy. It's quite remarkable. Forgery, almost certainly a forgery, but still an incredible story. So he also told a story of Bedouins finding the rolled up calcified scroll pieces in a remote cave. This resonance was Zeitlin's major argument that the Qumran provenance story was just a story. With Shapiro, he wrote, "The Bedouin and the cave became a myth." Zeitlin was onto something. The combination of tropes was in fact far older than the 19th century example of Shapiro. Already in 800 CE, the Christian patriarch Timothy I wrote a letter relating a secondhand report of an Arab hunter whose dog followed an animal into a cave near Jericho and found ancient Hebrew scrolls. It happened in the 16th century. It's something. There are patterns in the ways in which we tell these stories. Given the recurring motifs that we can trace across many centuries, Zeitlin had a point. The story of an ancient Arab finding ancient scrolls in a cave is indeed a myth. It comes with a certain collection of repeating motifs one could study through the lens of folklore, but it does not follow that the story is always a hoax. Regardless of the details of the Qumran discoveries, the general outlines of the Bedouin shepherders' discoveries are true. And the scrolls, at least the ones discovered in the 1940s and the 50s, are unquestionably authentic. But there is always selectivity in how we choose to tell such stories, in what is emphasized and what is left aside, and even true stories become representations of our imagined worlds. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. Any thoughts on that, Vish?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you really want people to take a discovery seriously, especially if it's an artifact or an old text, if you have a fantastical narrative like this, it really helps it stick out in people's mind. They think, oh, this is a miracle that this was discovered, or that it was preserved for so long in this condition, or this was the time for it to be rediscovered. And it starts adding a lot of gravitas and mythological importance around it.
Yes, exactly.
So
exactly.
This is one of those things, like, you can see resonances in the narrative, like Joseph Smith found these golden plates and then he and that is part of the package that goes along with what's actually in the text.
Yeah.
Is this like story, this legend of him finding these objects, So I completely understand the skepticism around, like, these guys were out in the desert and just by pure happenstance, they found these amazing treasures. It just sounds like humans telling human stories. But
it really does.
Unlike some of the other things that were discovered in these tales, we actually have the Dead Sea Scrolls to study.
We certainly do. Yes.
So,
all right. So this is the really significant part of what Ava's pointing to in her work here. Sometimes motifs of contamination in real discovery stories become as viscerally evocative as Agnon's chronicle, written not with ink on parchment, but with pus on a leper's skin.
Please.
Yeah, it's gross. It's very gross. I do believe that's the last time she might say it once more, but John Allegro, we've talked about him before on this channel.
Yeah, we have. Bro fell off.
John Allegro's, yeah. His 1964 account of the discovery of the text at Wadi Mudabat in the 1950s, which include writings from the 2nd century CE Jewish revolt led by the messianic figure Bar Kokhba, is a striking example. Here again, Bedouin discovered these texts in some caves in the desert in various states of preservation. According to Allegro, the manuscripts had suffered from the depredations of visiting animals, human and otherwise, and particularly in the activities of rats, who, with regrettable lack of appreciation of true values, had used the precious leather and papyrus manuscripts as linings for their nests. The excavation developed into... What's that?
That is how rats do.
That's what they do, yeah.
They love shredding things up for their nests.
The excavation developed into a hunt for rats' nests, since each one was almost sure to produce remnants of a written document or two. Another contributory factor in the denudation of written material was that the later habitation by birds and small animals of the caves over hundreds of years had resulted in an abundant supply of guano, which the Bedouin had for years been collecting and selling in Bethlehem. It is not at all improbable that the Jewish orange groves near Bethlehem were fertilized with priceless ancient manuscripts written by their forefathers.
I gotta say, noise ending. Now I'm thinking about the one VHS movie, Hail Ratma.
Nice.
Have you seen that one yet? Did we show you that one?
I don't think we've seen it. I'm familiar with it, but yeah.
Great. Yeah, we gotta show you that one. That should go on our next movie session.
It's a good one. The text we still have to watch. We have to figure out a way to watch Good Boy too, though. I
can do it as long as Shudder sends me my freaking password reset email, which it's been days, plural.
Jesus.
I know.
Get on it, Shudder. Oh, Dapper has Shudder now too. That's, I think,
he does. He does.
Yeah, so we could do it there. Anyways, the texts become rats' nests. They become bat guano. The Bedouins sell texts not only in their intact form, but also after they had been processed by animals into fertilizer for new trees. Ancient manuscripts become mere organic matter and decompose into the physical environment, taking their place in a whimsically sketched cycle of loss and life. There is an anxiety here that the physical manuscript will no longer carry verbal meaning. They return to their materiality, sometimes indeed to the grossest kind of matter, apparently the opposite of their rarefied verbal communication. The images of soiled and scattered texts, scholars sorting through trash heaps and rats' nests and bat shit, reflect a vision of a soiled and scattered past, always near decomposition, whose salvage is always a dirty job. But there is something more sinister behind this passage about the ravages of animals, human and otherwise, and particularly rats who, with lack of appreciation of true values, had used the precious manuscripts for their nests. The rats here lack appreciation of true values, and in this they take on the persona of the stock character in the story, the Arab, who discovers but badly mishandles the precious writing. The Arab does not understand the true meaning of the find, but he is both the guide to the discovery and the greatest obstacle that stands in its way. His superstition, greed, and dishonesty jeopardize the past as much as rats and bats. Do scholars still subscribe to this set of colonial stereotypes, so prevalent in 19th century discovery accounts? Perhaps we would not admit it, but the way we tell our discovery stories shows they are not easily transcended. Let's stay with the account.
Woo, she cooking.
Yeah, she is. She's great. Let's stay with the account of the discovery at Wadi Murabat. Michael Wise's dense philological studies of the Bar Kokhba materials that's published with Yale Anchor Yale Press. It's in the Anchor Yale resource series. It's a very good book.
Okay.
Published in 2015. Includes a discovery narrative that draws heavily on John Allegro's 1964 account, but presents its own retelling. In 1951, a Bedouin came to Joseph Sayad, secretary of the Palestine Archaeological Museum, with 2 parchment fragments and a sandal he said was from a different cave some distance from the ongoing Qumran discoveries. Saad asked the Bedouin to return with the people who had first found the cave, but nobody showed up for several days. He had a friend who was a British Army officer, and he supplied some armed men and a jeep. And Saad went in search of the Bedouin who might know where this new cave was. He didn't succeed, but on the way back, in his jeep full of soldiers, Saad happened to spot the very Bedouin who approached him in Jerusalem. Wise, retelling Allegro's account, writes, at sharp orders from the secretary, the vehicle skidded to a halt. Questioned. The man refused to answer, whereupon he was summarily pitched into the vehicle. As they drove, Saad explained to his involuntary guest in pellucid terms that any further refusal to cooperate would have nothing but the gravest consequences. Given what had already transpired, and stealing a glance at the hard faces of the soldiers all around him, the frightened tribesman found such threats easy to believe. He reluctantly agreed to show the way to the cave. This man's violent seizure from the side of the road by a group of armed men is presented as a rollicking tale. The man is identified only by his ethnic marker and emotions, a frightened tribesman. Through the boisterous tone, what are we supposed to visualize when we read Saad warned him that refusal to cooperate would have the gravest consequences? What threats were so effective? To have him killed? At least to trump up charges to have him thrown in prison? But we shouldn't worry about this as we chuckle at the story. When they had gone as far as they could drive, there was still a 7-hour trek on foot each way. We hear about the aching muscles of the secretary and the guards, but there is no such concern about the man who was forced at gunpoint to guide them. When they approached the site, they spied clouds of dust wafting from 2 enormous cave entrances. A dozen tribal workers darted from the caves, stumbling over each other. Several warning shots fired into the air over the heads halted their flight, and the soldiers began to herd the dust-covered Bedouin together so they could be questioned. One final paragraph to illustrate the tone and the assumptions of this account. Saad arrived in Jerusalem just as morning was dawning. On the way, he had handed the Bedouin over to the authorities in Bethlehem. Now back home, he dutifully contacted the local inspector of antiquities and reported all that had happened, turning over as well the sandal and the scroll fragment. Then he fell exhausted into bed, awaking much later in the day to find himself accused of kidnapping and incarcerating their guide. Crazy, right? To this charge, there was, of course, some truth, but the man himself had been involved in illegal activities. Matters were eventually smoothed over. Saad suffered nothing more serious than a severe reprimand. The tone of this account is one of bemused distance. Note that Saad awoke to find himself accused of kidnapping and incarcerating their guide, as if kidnapping and incarcerating were not quite the right words to use to describe what
literally passive voice doing all the heavy lifting. Oh, well, these charges that he just found himself accused. It just, like, he didn't do anything that would be worthy of this. It was just like something happened to him. Oh no, I found myself in this situation. How did this happen? God.
Yeah.
Y'all.
The concession that there was some truth to this is dismissed because the man had been involved in illegal activities, presumably in not disclosing the fines to the authorities. Matters were eventually smoothed over. The reader, it appears, is expected to feel relieved that there were no consequences. The story is retold because it adds life to a dense and technical study of the text. The paratextual role of the discovery narrative, its value for creating an entertaining frame and context for the study of a set of manuscripts, is on full display. I've done this myself. I hopefully not so insensitively, but discovery narratives, they color your artifacts. Much of it is probably a true account, but it is the manner of telling I want to highlight, its choices and assumptions. The way that this story has become a story in Allegro's original version, as retold in 2015, depends on older narratives about the cave, the manuscript, and the Arab. The Arab is the only connection to the discovery, but he is also the major obstacle and threat to its possession, and somebody who is never quite fully a human subject. We see the intertwining of state violence with the discovery of manuscripts. We see the orientalized way the frightened tribesmen and the herd of dust-covered Bedouin are described, and the clear implication that the physical intimidation of certain kinds of people is entertaining and not to be taken too seriously. The reader is expected to identify with a particular side, this assumption that we, too, will read the word kidnapping in a bemused tone when it describes a violent seizure by armed men is a powerful expectation. The story does not try to mask what it is describing, but plays it up as if it was unremarkable and unquestionably worth it. The greatest object of desire is the possibility of saving the lost text from bats and from humans, recovering a past that rightfully belongs only to some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3-point shot from half court.
Yeah. So
let me simplify this for future listeners, because sometimes I assume that people will get it, and perhaps if I say it in a different way, these narratives of rediscovering a lost history, of a mythologized past, of primitive tribes people who need to be corrected or educated or informed by the educated Westerner who's not primitive and tribal and dust covered. These things feed into a nationalistic narrative that privileges one group of people over another, and in this specific context, privileges Jewish Israelis over Arab Palestinians. That was an intentional campaign, and it remains so. So when you're looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls or the discoveries at Murabat, when people are telling these stories like, oh, well, some Arab just didn't know what he was discovering, but us educated scholars from the West, we've reclaimed from these primitive people who would have destroyed them in their ignorance. Like, this is supremacy, but it's dressed up in the language of a discovery of a text. And, literally, if you're driving a Jeep around with a bunch of guys who are armed and you go, stop the car, and the guy pulls over and you literally grab a dude off the road and pull him into your car and start threatening him, how is that not kidnapping? This is I found myself accused of kidnapping. Like, you kidnapped a guy and you threatened him. So this is a long pattern. This has been happening in colonial states for generations. This is not a new phenomenon. So when we talk about, decolonial movements and decolonial thought, it's untangling these supremacist narratives from the discoveries that are being made so that you can look at the work, you can analyze whatever the discovery was, and really get a fuller picture of what's going on. Like someone earlier in the chat said that these are the things that they're interested in with these discoveries, letting them speak for themselves rather than someone like back projecting modern ideas and labels and stuff. Like, canon or not, they didn't think in those boxes, and so like earlier scholars, like I was describing, we're going, this psalm is different than the one that we read, in the Masoretic text. Is this canon or not? Let's talk about canon. It's like, that's not the question.
Yes.
Ask, hey, why is it that there is a line for the letter nun in this version, and also there's an added benediction at the end of every line? Can we talk about that? So yeah, there's a lot of really good comments. Biblical archaeology deliberately ignored the post-2nd century history of the area. Even Wes was missing some of this, is when he was talking about like, oh, this culminated in 70 CE. Like, that was a big deal. And it was important, but that wasn't the culmination of the end of an era.
No.
Because there were more rebellions after that.
Yeah.
That in 70 CE, all of the Jews in the land weren't suddenly spread to the wind, right? There were more rebellions for many more decades, and only one of those resulted in the Romans and the leaders of that region being like, all right, you're causing too many problems. So these narratives, they're being selectively told and selectively curated, and you really got to interrogate that. Who does it serve? Whose purposes does it serve when you're telling the stories this way? Ask those questions.
Very important questions to ask. And this feeds into what I said at the start of this stream, right? That for the apologists, when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, all they care about is not even just the texts, but certain texts. And all they care about is this question of supposed fidelity of the manuscripts to what they imagine to be the untainted, purified form of this thing we've identified as the biblical text.
Theology. Therefore, it must be the correct, tradition. It doesn't matter my theology. Well, that's just a variant. That's sectarian. We had a very long conversation about that in one of my Jewish history classes. I think it was last spring, talking about what even qualifies as sectarian. Like, that is assuming a default position that others are deviating from. So what are you considering, like, the mainstream or the central thing that a sectarian would not be a part of? Someone mentions that Wes described these finds as on the border of Israel and Jordan. They were in the West Bank.
They're in the West Bank.
But literally, that's the West Bank.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just, again, it's language. You need to think about why people are talking to you this way. He wouldn't say Palestine. There are lots of evangelical Christians that will physically not say the word Palestine.
Yeah.
Because they do not want to legitimize that identity. That's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is.
Come on, Wes.
So we will return to this video of Wes in the future. Like there will be more streams talking about some of the stuff in scrolls. I really wanted to talk today about discovery narratives because of how he features the canonical one, and I am using that word intentionally here. And I want us to think critically about everything that Vish just said here about the language that's being used in these stories and the service to which these stories are being marshaled, right? Like put into use. And I want to finish up with one more thing. If you can pull up the other video, the one that's the 2018 video.
Okay.
You know the one? That's the one. So this is, I wanted to finish up with this because we talked about Ava talked about competing stories about the discovery in the Dead Sea Scrolls. He talked about some of the tropes that are repeated through the discoveries, the discovery stories of the scrolls. So I did I need to set this up. From 2015 through 2020, I was working on a project. It was a project on the forgeries, Dead Sea Scrolls forgeries housed at the museum, owned by the Museum of the Bible. Part of that project was a provenance study, attempting to track the material to see where it came from, to see if we could identify the sources of these fragments. And in the course of that, I stumbled upon this very interesting short video. So the gentleman in this video is Shibli Kendo. You might recognize that name. This is the grandson of Kendo Sr., who was the recipient of the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found by the Bedouin, mostly from caves 1 and 11 and cave 4. And he brokered the sales for virtually everything between their discoverers and the scholars and the archaeologists who eventually ended up publishing the material. So this is his grandson, who is one of the owners and managers, I guess, of the antiquities shop that still operates in Bethlehem in the West Bank. And this is a very interesting video to me, because here is Shibli Kendo telling the story of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls that he presumably heard from his grandfather, who was there.
And also just bringing attention to the fact that Bethlehem, which is in the West Bank, which is Palestine, do you see how easy it is to just call things what they are?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's me dunking on evangelicals and right-wing Christian Zionists. Okay.
Okay, I was stopping the shop here. My buddy Shibli yelled on me at the street of Bethlehem the other day, saying, "Hey, don't I know you?" I spun around and looked at him and took a couple of seconds and went, "Shibli?"
Yes, and I told you, "Hey, man in green, do I know you?"
So I'm here at his shop in Bethlehem. It's right inside the wall. And he has an interesting piece here that you just don't find anyplace else. Tell me about this urn.
This urn is one of 4 urns that exist in the world. One over here, 2 in the Israeli Museum, and 1 in the Vatican. And those urns, which the Dead Sea Scrolls of Qumran being found inside them.
Can you pause it for a second?
And most of the people...
This particular urn, we are told, is the one that was recovered from cave 11 and which contained the temple scroll. That is on display at Kendo's shop. And before we continue, I just want to remind people that when it comes to Kendo Senior, in fact, maybe I'll just read this before continuing. This is part of the document that I wrote for the Museum of the Bible when I did my provenance investigation. I'll just read what I wrote here about Kendo Senior. Kendo Senior had a reputation as a shrewd antiquarian, but there is no assurance that these skills that these were skills he bequeathed to all of his sons. While earlier accounts of the discovery portray Kando as a simple cobbler only interested in sourcing good leather to make shoes, a much more favorable appraisal appears in later recollections. And I'll just draw my your attention back here to John Allegro's introduction to the Dead Sea Scrolls that he published in 1956. He says this of Kando: when the Bedouins showed him the scrolls, he evinced little interest, but thought they might serve as raw material for his cobbler's business. Later, after they had been kicking around about the floor of the shop for some days, he picked up one, looked more closely at the surface. And this is from Ed Cook's book, Solving the Mysteries of the Dead Sea Scrolls. One thing, however, is clear, says Cook. If Mar Samuel had not acted as he did, Kando would likely have used the greatest manuscript discovery of modern times to repair shoes in his cobblery, and no one would have seen them. So that's the story as it was told about Kando for some years. Now let's listen to how his grandson tells this story.
All know how the story started, and whatever you're taking pictures at or filming is a replica or a copy of the temple scroll, which been found in this urn, including the book of Isaiah. That's why they consider this urn is the largest, actually it is, and the most perfect shape and the most important.
Wow.
Well, pause for a second there, though, right? I have to point this out that that's wrong, because the Great Isaiah Scroll was found in Cave 1, and the Temple Scroll was found in Cave 11. So I like, we have to be careful, right? When we appraise our discovery narratives. Yeah, I noticed that too. Maddie, that the volume on the video is really quiet. I don't know that.
I'm gonna link it in the side chat just in case people want to watch it later.
It's very interesting, but we have to be careful in how we handle all the information that we have at our disposal, and that's part of just being a good historian, right? Is to carefully evaluate your sources. And I don't want to say at the outset that I think that everything Shibli Kando says here is accurate, but I also think this is an important voice in the retelling of this story. It's a common urn of the region and period. Nothing special about it other than its contents. Correct, Pat. Correct.
It has sentimental value.
It does. Very sentimental.
Okay, keep going.
All right.
My father, he was, what to say, actually the background of my granddad, he's from the survivors of the genocide, the massacre in 1915 in Turkey. We're not Armenians, but when it started with the Armenians ran away and they hid in the villages beside them. And of course, till the order came from the Turkish Empire then to take over the whole Christians. So he was from the survivors, he and mom and dad, who were able to leave over there and run away and came and settled in Bethlehem. God used them as the instrumental who brought the attention of the world to Dead Sea Scrolls. And then when it happened, he owned a leather workshop. He was a shoemaker. But in the same time, he was educated also, and he was known as antique dealer because his passion was toward archaeological artifacts, especially biblical archaeology.
So I just want to spotlight two things real quick that are blaring neon signs here.
Mm-hmm.
Kando is saying, my granddad was educated. He wasn't just some idiot, peasant, primitive, tribal guy. B, he was a Christian.
Yes. He was. Syrian
So
Orthodox.
let me just reiterate that. Kando's grandfather was a Syrian Christian. So these narratives like, oh, the primitive Arab, Bedouin, whatever. Yo. This is... I don't want to have to keep saying this, but the prejudice and ignorance against Arab Christians, Syrian Orthodox Christians, Armenian Christians, Christians that live anywhere in Southwest Asia, in North Africa, it is astounding levels of bigotry and ignorance. When a Palestinian Christian church was bombed, where were the Western Christians getting all outraged about it? You know, these are the things that, like, who do these narratives serve? Like, do people forget that, like, you know, the Coptic Christian community is one of the oldest continuously functioning Christian communities on the planet?
Right.
You know? It's so freaking frustrating. But yeah, like... okay. Breathe.
And those guys used to cooperate with my granddad a lot because most of their time in the wilderness. So whatever they found by chance used to bring him, and sometimes he used to send them to dig. It took him over 2 years to convince those two brothers to enter those caves. Finally, when they went there, to be honest, and word of truth, neither my grandfather, they, or anyone was expecting to find whatever they found. When they brought him that first piece of leather, he was able to tell it's genuine. But about the authentication, he has no clue, because it was out of the range of his experience in archaeological artifacts. What caught his eyes then, more than the archaeological issue, was the biblical issue, which after a few weeks keeping that piece of leather, cleaning it cautiously, carefully, till the inscription shows up. And as we say, God always works in his way. He has his own ways to show up things. Out of the whole manuscripts, which been found later, whatever they grabbed was from the very few which it was written in his mother tongue, the ancient Aramaic language, the first language Jesus spoke. This is my mother tongue, and he's still from the few in the world who speak this language. By reading what shows it clearly, he knew something biblical. So the biblical issue was more important. And our Christian perspectives over here, any biblical manuscript, regardless, young, old, genuine, not genuine, authentic, not authentic, should be preserved well until it will end up between the right hands. We asked the shepherd to get back to the caves and bring him whatever they can find. So between 1947 to late 52, close to 80% from what being found in the caves were between his hands.
Yeah, and like obviously I'm not gonna talk about like the theological stuff that's between him and his family, but
yeah,
I did want to spotlight a comment. Isn't much of what he says likely to be inaccurate. He's the grandson of an antiquities dealer who did some fuck shit and smuggled stuff. He's incentivized to massage story. There are things that can be equally true. It is equally true that Kando's grandfather and ancestry survived an attempted like genocide of Christians, and that he may have done some fuck shit and sold antiquities illegally or whatever. Those things can both be true.
Now, I think there's some historical context required here as well, because, I mean, at the time that Kando was selling antiquities, it was not illegal. There wasn't nothing. Yeah. It wasn't smuggling and looting, because the world in the 1940s and 50s and 60s was a much different place than it is today. So I'm hesitant to cast those sorts of aspersions on the man, and it's challenging, right? Because what we're left with are agenda-driven stories on all these sides, and that's kind of the point of this part of the stream here, right? Is that the stories are in service of the agenda from everyone, and it's
power
up
structures.
It's up to the trained historians who can sift through this stuff to figure out where the truth lies. But it's this is certainly a counter narrative, and absolutely, I do not buy this story in its entirety, right? I mean, for one thing, I think it's highly unlikely that that Kando was keying in on Aramaic texts from the Dead Sea Scrolls early on, because as far as I'm aware, he he would have read Syriac, being part of the Syrian Orthodox Church, but as far as I'm aware, certainly early on, he wasn't reading the Hebrew and the Aramaic
I was gonna say,
letters.
like, I was giving a little bit of a side eye when he says, you know, my dad came from the Syrian Christian community, which I'm like, okay. So ostensibly, they're reading and communicating in Syriac, which I don't know if the audience is aware, but the Syriac like alphabet and the way that it's written doesn't look like Aramaic or Hebrew. They're similar, but there's a little bit of like, I need some more clarification there. Because I mean, hey, I don't know. He may have been fluent in reading Aramaic with like the block letters. That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
In this particular telling, it doesn't seem like he's clarified that so far. So I'm a little bit like, I don't know, but
yeah.
Okay. Keep going. Or do you
Yeah.
want to wrap this up? Or 'cause it's about 4:30 and you're gonna have to.
It is about
you're gonna have to
4:30,
go
and I have
soon,
to go
right?
here pretty quick. So, I think how much is left on it? It's
We're only about like just past halfway. So unless we
play it for
put
like
it on a
another
faster
minute,
speed.
maybe.
Article
And
58,
then we'll
nobody
wrap this up.
cared, nobody understand. That year when the carbon-14 test being made through Princeton University, New Jersey, the results came out. Everybody then started turning after my granddad to buy the scrolls and get the scrolls from him, which he kept refused selling it or giving it to anyone because he had a dream to establish the first Christian museum in the city of Bethlehem. But in the same time, he said, if I'm not able to fulfill this dream, this excavation should be between hands who can save it, take good care of it, and not to deal with it as a merchandise. And he kept taking care of them. And of course, then his mind was going to the Vatican, because as it is a biblical, as I said, biblical manuscript. But after the chaotic situation after 1967, the scrolls in a certain way being taken away from his hands by the Israelis to were now displayed in the Israeli Museum, except this urn, which he was able to keep it as memory of that occasion, and it's part from my family.
If he was a Syrian, I'm assuming a Syrian Orthodox, so not particularly
Why the Vatican?
Clear on the Vatican, because I'm like, wouldn't you
I'm
go
not.
through the patriarchate structure first? But okay, whatever, it's fine.
It's and this is again one of these we can that's probably it for the video, but and that's something too I wanted to catch that bit at the end there too, where he points out, and one of the things that happened after the 6-Day War in 1967, when Israel basically annexed the entire West Bank. At this time, the Eliezer Sukenik is a name I mentioned earlier. He was the archaeologist, the professor of archaeology at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, who was one of the first to have access to the scrolls. That night, when he celebrated both Israel independence and his discovery, his incredible stroke of good fortune to have in his possession the Hodayot. That night, his son was in the house with him. His son later on took on the name Yagel Yadin and became the deputy prime minister of Israel.
Woo!
And in 1967, after the 6-Day War ended, it was Yigal Yadin who dispatched officers from the army to go to Kando's house and to collect the temple scroll from
Take it by
his
force.
house
Just like that.
in
Take it
Jerusalem.
by force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me, right? The ways in which these stories intersect and the players involved in how they tell them. Even stories that we would consider true from all sides will have different points of view, which deeply color the ways in which we think about this material and the artifacts. Yadin's name comes up in the newly uncovered documents from Nachba. Ah, wow. I was unaware of that, just so everyone knows.
And again, these things, when future viewers go back to listen to this, some of them might be inclined to complain. Oh no, politics. I don't want to hear about your politics.
Yeah.
Just tell me about the... Here's the thing. Politics is a part of the story. Because when you have people who are themselves nationalists, if they can find things that will build up their nationalist project, they're going to be very motivated to acquire those by force or other means. So, you know, if you have a guy like Yigal Yadin, who's like, oh, hey, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which, you know, are part of the history of this region, can be used in service of the nationalistic project that I'm running, we're going to go get them. And these are things that you need to talk about alongside these discoveries. The same way that you talk about the Rosetta Stone, while also mentioning Napoleon's campaigns in Egypt. That is a part of the story. It's not like, oh, well, those are just boring ass politics. Like, that's part of this thing.
Part of it.
So, you know, you really got to talk about the things that are going on the ground. You know, that's part of it. It's not like, oh, well, that's just a side story. No, it's everything. This is the backdrop for why people are doing what they're doing. So,
yeah, it is. All right.
Yeah.
But I do got to get out of here.
So he thought about the Vatican because they had money. That makes sense. That
I think so.
And then also there's a Catholic Assyrian church that is also true. So, yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Turns out
there's a couple
the
of
politics is what the polis does. So, you know. Yeah.
I think there's starting with there's one from Ninjester that I don't think we read.
Yes. Okay.
Tell me to you got it. There we go.
One of these days, we need your literary tier zoo till we can qualify your love of the Bible, possibly part 2 and 3 on the various books inside.
Okay.
So people will rank, you know, stuff like S tier, A, B, C, D, things like that. We want to see a tier list for your books.
Okay. Got it.
All right.
Books in the Bible?
I'm tab for 2. Europeans used to eat mummies as medicine. Again, these are Western attitudes of what people just feel like they're entitled to take and use for whatever purposes they feel like. That is a part of the story. You can't just leave it out. But your literary tier zoo, the various books inside. I took that to mean your personal library, but it could mean books.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
well,
let me know, Ninjester,
that's something we can talk about in the future for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Tree Climb tab for 2. You know who else was a Zionist? Chuck Norris. Yeah, that guy actually sucked. Rest in peace. Yes. He was sexist and bigoted and anti-vaxxer and just not a great person. So, okay, that's all the super chats. We don't have any other of those. There may have been some comments scattered throughout that I haven't read, but you know,
it is getting on, and I've got 20 minutes to get on to the bridge of the
USS so you can go play Star Trek.
Kongzi.
It'll be a different kind of nerd.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming and hanging out. Do you want to just let everybody know what's happening over the weekend? And
so tonight he's going to redirect everyone over to Top Hats Off, which is where Dapper Dinosaur plays tabletop games and does other things. So you can go watch some people play Star Trek and be nerds and have some fun. And then tomorrow, if all goes according to plan, Kip and I will be back on Dapper Dinosaur's proper channel discussing and debunking somebody who legitimately thinks that the 1611 version of the King James Version written in English was the original language that God spoke at creation.
It's wild.
So
it really
I don't
is.
got to
It's
tell you
something
how
else.
nonsensical that is. But if you want to laugh at some dumb, feel free to tune in that tomorrow morning. That'll be
Yeah.
at noon noon Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern.
Pacific.
And then that evening, I think you're doing
Yeah.
that's
Budget Scripture
Budget Scripture
Saturday.
Saturday. You're gonna have Nitty and then some people filling in for Tapioca Weasel. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So
That'll be here on
the Dr. Tapioca Weasel is going to be unable to join us for Budget Scripture Saturday, and I have recruited my friends Tommy and Matt over at the Humanity Live to fill in, and we're all going to get drunk together and laugh our asses off, and it's going to be a good time, and that's tomorrow.
Very
And
relaxed
I should also
atmosphere, just
say
come chill.
it's very
Mm.
fun. So that's at 7 Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And I should also say too, the Weasels is taking the entire weekend off, which means that he's not going to be back on
Bad Science
Sunday this Sunday. So I will be filling in, which is great because I
And what channel will
like
that be on?
doing that show. That is on the Maya Atkinson's channel, which is called Bad Science Sunday. You can find it both ways using Maya Atkinson's name or just Bad Science Sunday. All right. Thanks everyone for coming and hanging out. Oh yeah, and don't forget, next week Paula Gia and CJ Cornswain are going to be on, and we're going to be looking at some bullshit from Inspiring Philosophy.
I am
All right.
fangirling a little bit. So
Yay. It's very exciting. Cool. All right, you guys. Be good. Stay safe.
Be excellent.
Look after
to each
yourself.
other.
And as always, hot take 5.